Okay, this is the area where the dahlias, which are new to me this year in 2019, I've put together. This particular one happens to be Dakara Jodi. It's got lots and lots of nice sized flowers on it. I'm certainly not going to say that it's all roses, just because of the fact that the back shows a severe
fading,
loss of color.
Yeah.
So, and the other thing I suppose I should point out is that my color shift, and now this is obviously the end of September, I'm not fond of the idea of the color loss. It seems that most of the new ones that are coming out predominantly yellow rather than coming out with the orange or the orange tangerine of the original blooms. So I'm not sure. I would grow it again to try to get an opinion for a second year, but if it didn't do better, it probably wouldn't get a third year. But just like everything else, you have to give these things a try, because what my experience might not be what the experience might be in somebody else's garden.
You can really see it in this one. It's quite yellow compared to this.
Yeah, very substantial difference.
Although I would say earlier in the year, this would be pretty nice. It would make a good...
Now, this would also be best grown if you had the ability to grow under cover.
Yeah.
So if you were able to keep some of the sunlight off it, or growing in an area where it was maybe 5 hours of sunlight rather than a full day.
Yep.
And this flower here is another Sooty. It's probably my most favorite out of all the Sooties. You can see here on the tag, it's Neptune. And while there's a color range in these blooms, you might have trouble getting a 5-pack or a 3-pack, but if you can see this type of a bloom right here, that to me is the ideal coloring that you're going to get with a good chunk of these, especially when they're still in the juvenile state. As they progress a little bit, they tend to lose a little bit of the color and become more white-like. But that to me is just absolutely beguiling, just marvelous.
It's so prolific, Murray. I think you'd be okay finding 3 flowers that match in here.
Well, certainly, with the volume that I've got.
Yes, it's...
I mean, there's these ones right here, and there's more back over here. But even if you had, say, 3 bushes, for example, the fact that there's enough flowers...
The form on this little bloom is just spectacular.
Well, this got me the best in section for the Min cactus.
It did.
At the last show, which is, I was just so pleased with that. Now, this one also is one that, it reminds me of Kiwi Gloria, but it's Kilmori. And the sale of this one was listing the color as salmon. I don't tend to see salmon in this particular one.
Pink.
To me, it's, as I say, it's more like the Kiwi Gloria actually color, but it's a lovely, to me, it's a lovely form. It pleases me to see it, and you can mix it with these kinds of things again, like I've shown you this one before. It's a lovely mix, and it's lots and lots of flowers on it as well. I've got it here, I've got it back over here as well.
That's a beautiful little bloom right there.
But these are great size for arrangements, for bouquets, and in fact, if you have a small vehicle when you're traveling to the shows, these are great for show people, because you can go in a very small car and still get all of your blooms to the show, no problem.
Yeah. Now look at this big beauty, Le Feu du Soleil.
Le Feu du Soleil is a fire of the sun in French. These ones earlier in the season were all coming up with the green center, which dismayed me somewhat. But now that it's cooler weather, now whether the length of day makes a difference or not, but it's a huge bloom, laciniated. I love the appearance of it, but from a show standpoint, it would be nice to figure out if there was a way to offer it an environment which would eliminate or minimize the green centeredness to it.
Yeah. I mean, the backs are standing up really well too.
Yes,
They're still,
they are.
it's still got a ways to go, that flower, and it's pretty good.
Now this one here has probably been, I'm going to say it's about 2 weeks or 2.5 weeks, and only now are you now starting to see some degradation in the back petals.
It's holding up well.
But from a front,
Still got a center.
the front is still just quite suitable. Now it won't be much longer before it does go open centered, but even still, the average person in the bouquet side of life, it doesn't bother.
And I believe this is a new water lily this year, Murray. Right?
It is.
This one is called
Right on the stake here. Edwins Sunset.
beautiful, beautiful color.
They classify it as a water lily vivid red. That's obviously not an ADS designation, it's a Halls of Heaven designation, but it is true. This has had no cover, and there is absolutely no discernible loss of intensity of color,
None.
even in growing in full sun. That's a flower head. Leave that one on there, and I'm going to
Is
be...
it like Max Royal Ruby Red? It's similar, right?
I think Max might have a little bit more orange to it, but yes, it's intense,
so
and it holds
intense.
the color. Yes. Now, what would be interesting to find out, and that's why I'm saying I'm going to keep this flower seed, the flower head, is because I know that one of your favorite for definitions is the Pam Howden.
Yes.
But Pam Howden, whether our watching audience knows or not, is a sterile bloom. I'm really hoping that this is not a sterile bloom.
Right.
So we'll get a chance to find out if that seed pod actually produces something.
And next we have one of my favorites. It's called Weston Allegories. It's absolutely spectacular. I think we had problems with green centers earlier on in the year, and it's starting to get better now with the cooler weather. Not quite sure, the centers are still not quite full on it, so we'll have to give it a couple more years to see how it goes, but the form and the color is just perfect. Weston Allegories. I think we have another Josuti. Josuti
We do.
Hercules.
We have a Josuti Hercules right here. Now this one, obviously you could see the center going, but up in here, this is called a miniature cactus. The color is considered to be brick red, which is obviously not as intense colored as the water lily that you might have already seen. And this one happens to be something in the same color palette, but this is Telstar. You can see that the extra yellow in the basal part of the florets shows you the difference. But it took me a while to realize that it wasn't the same. It wasn't the same cultivar at all. But both of them are really quite spectacular. Great for form, great for color. There we go. I'll gather them here together and take them into Sharon once I figure out where I'm going with them. Okay. Now,
Over here we have Rossendale Roxy, a nice miniature formal deck. It's a good healthy plant. Very similar to Blighton Softer Gleam, but
and Rycroft Delight is somewhat similar as well.
Yeah.
Now, this is now halfway between the colors when it comes out first and the mature color. As it gets more mature, you wind up seeing the orange disappear more and more. And this one's a blown head, but you can see here where the orange is almost completely disappeared. But this was very floriferous, lots and lots of blooms on it. But again, I don't do much in the way of disbudding or debranching. And obviously, with me being away for the summer, most of these basically fend for themselves. In fact, these ones were strong enough to get by without even being supported during the summertime. there's, I would say, about 50% of the flowers that I grow out here were doing reasonably well for growing vertically until the end of August. Obviously, after that point in time, with the cooler weather and the climate of the end of the year, it's getting more moisture, and the growth really happens in the top growth. But by the end of August, you really should have most of the dahlias tied up. Now, did you want to introduce your Rycroft Helen?
This is my Rycroft Helen.
This is your Rycroft Helen. Maybe you can narrate this.
So hi, this is Lori. I'm behind the camera today. So this is, I think, a Pottuber that I purchased from Halls of Hedon this year, and I think Murray took care of this one for me. Maybe not. Maybe I've taken care of this one, given him some cuttings, but it's been very floriferous for me. It's a very strong grower. It does have beautiful form. There is conversation about whether it's ever going to beat a good Himalayan cord, but we shall see. At the very least, it probably throws a few more blooms than Himalayan cord does, so you might get lucky in that respect. But yeah, beautiful, beautiful flower.
Okay, this is another one of my Joe Sooty additions this year. This particular one is Joe Sooty Aurora. I was able to get very prolific results from the Pottuber. I passed along, I believe it was 3 or 4 of them, and I still had 15 to plant. Now, this is probably a challenge flower to grow. Unless you keep it from getting weedy, that means it winds up putting out all kinds of flowers. The flowers don't last very long, and the colors change quite a little bit in the process. Here you see one that's probably as good as you're likely to get. It's got good deep orange color to it with the yellow centers. This is one that would be perhaps 2 days or so later. That just happens to be my experience. I know there's others that have grown this one this year. I'd be very interested in knowing what their experience with it would be as well. But I'm out here on a daily basis chopping off the ones that have gone open-centered. I can't get 2 days without collecting something of open-centered, and sometimes it's almost a half a pail of open-centers if I'm not on top of it. Yeah, very small flowers. Now, form-wise, what you see here is just about what you get on almost every flower. The stems aren't all that particularly strong. I would recommend severe disbudding, and in fact some debranching, in order to wind up getting a show-worthy bloom. It is possible, but it will take work. But anyway, out of 15 plants, I probably could do okay. But it might take that.
So here they all are together. But almost all of these are Joe Sooties except one. And I forget the name of it.
The Rycroft Pixie?
The Rycroft Pixie. So this bigger one is Rycroft Pixie. And this is Joe Sooty
Hercules.
No, Telstar.
Telstar, that's
Telstar. Right. They're almost identical in color, but except for size. Pixie's quite a bit bigger, but almost the same.
I'd be drawn towards the larger bloom there.
I like the size of the Pixie myself, but you could get these guys a little bigger with some disbudding, I guess, maybe.